being last for some time, for some reason every time.
Oh,
Terrible.
what
Yeah.
are the ground rules? Sorry, I should have asked this before. Sorry.
I mean, is there ground rules,
No,
Janiqua?
you
Or
can
that
curse.
curse.
We
You
can
can
talk about
cuss. There's
capitalism.
bourbon,
We can do everything.
right? Yeah, there is really. Yeah. So the other than what typically like. Yeah, you just don't want to say anything that will get you in trouble with like your bosses or anything. But
Yeah.
outside of that, like when it comes to the workshop, this is we're adults. We can have adult conversations, and if anything, is sort of off color, off taste, I just sort of I'll cut it out. So
And then we'll just pretend we don't know you at work.
You
yeah.
guys know this person named Gunnery Sergeant too?
It's just like, hey.
All right. Oh, yeah. But awesome. Okay, so and is Danny good?
Yeah,
Danny,
Danny's good.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so shut up, Janiqua. Lock
Wow.
it in. Lock it in.
Why would you try to make it more formal? Like that's
I, anyways,
Daniel.
all right. And Danny, welcome to the Long Roll Podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
We're excited to have you here. I mean, you're a celebrity, in our world. You're the grand, big overall winner of the Eddie Adams Workshop. I think you're the first military person to ever win the overall award at the workshop. And so to be in your presence, to capture some of that success, we'll take it, we'll package it up, and we'll definitely use it in our lives. But, I know I'm ridiculous. I know that's silly. And also, I know we just recently left the workshop, which is, I think, it's been an incredible year. I think it was an incredible class. But today's about you. And first things first, what we always like to know is everyone's origin story. Everyone has an origin story when photography was first introduced into their lives. And Danny, can you share with us your origin story when photography was trickled into your life?
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm not sure how much wisdom I can impart, but I'll try my best. um, I would say I started photography back in right when I joined the Marine Corps. So straight at Dinfos, kind of like everybody. I didn't have any desire before to learn about photography. I was actually wanted to be a musician, so it kind of just happened by accident, honestly.
So, yeah, Jenny, 1 second. So, I mean, one musician, I never would have picked that up, and maybe that's a huge miss by me. But also, so paint that picture for us. Like, how does that happen? Like, so for instance, I know I've told the story a couple times for myself. I was supposed to be a load master when I applied to go into the Air Force, and I signed the contract, got to basic. I go to see the job counselor at basic, and they're like, "Yeah, no, what do you mean you have a contract, sir? You can either go in open general or you can go home." And so that typically means, for the listeners who haven't heard this story for the 100th time, is I was either going to be a cop or serving food or passing out basketballs. Not thrilling, not as exciting as a life that I painted for myself as I was leaving on that bus to get to basic. But long story short, I got lucky. I got photography. And when I got to school and everything, I didn't even like photography. I hated it at first. But luckily, I got a great mentor that taught me the ways, the Jedi ways, and I've been in love with it ever since. And so for you, like you want to be a musician. So I want to unpack a little bit more about that. When did music get introduced in your life? Who inspired you to want to do music? And then when you were talking to the Marine recruiter, did they trick you that the band was like an option? And then they're like, actually, you're going to be a photographer? Or like, again, unpack all this for us.
Well, yeah, my oldest sister was probably my inspiration for that. She started playing guitar, and I kind of saw her playing around with it at home, and so I wanted to pick it up too. She was the one that bought me my first guitar. I started taking lessons in high school, and then I went to college for music. So it's been a very big part of my life. But when it came to joining the Marine Corps, I actually auditioned to be a musician. And the recruiter came all the way down from Sacramento because I was living in California at the time. And he basically gave me like a list of like sheet music. He's like, this is what we're going to have you play during your audition. And when I was sitting right next to him, he was like, okay, I whipped out a completely brand new set of sheet music. He's like, I want you to read this instead. It's like,
This
oh,
reminds me of Whiplash. Is it like Whiplash? And did they throw shit at you? I mean,
yeah,
I feel like that's what the Marines would do, throw a symbol at your head as you're playing your shit.
just play one note wrong and they just immediately slam it in the bar over your head. Yeah, so safe to say, if you don't know, most guitarists, we're notorious for being terrible at reading sheet music. So I did not pass the audition. Um,
Damn.
yeah, and so that kind of disillusioned me. I like avoided the recruiters for like a month, and then they hit me up.
Oh no.
Yeah,
They found you. Yeah, they didn't hit you up. They found you.
Yo,
Like
it
you were.
happens,
They had to meet
man.
quota.
I had an army
yeah,
recruiter stalking me, bro.
yeah. I've heard recruiters too. Like they talk about whenever they do land musicians, it's like a big event for them. So, um,
The more we know, the more
yeah.
we know.
So, but yeah, they came back to me and they're like, "Well, you took your ASVAB. These are the jobs we have available for you." One of them was like ordnance loader. I don't really want to load
No,
bombs
no,
to
no,
jets or
bro.
anything like
Mm-mm.
that. Isn't that kind of similar to what like loadmaster is?
No, no. I mean, in
Nah.
a way, okay,
No?
Janiqua. No, so it's it would be an unfair reduction, Janiqua, and
To
so we
what?
don't.
Why
What do
am
you
I
mean?
getting reprimanded?
Because your faces, your
I
reactions.
all I did was react that way is because someone is excited
Oh
for that
wow,
job.
yeah,
Someone wants to do that. And
and
that's fine. That's not
Good
what
for
I
them.
yeah.
want to do.
Oh,
But
okay,
someone.
Dan, you're not hyping it up very well.
I love
No,
that.
but no, yeah, Loadmaster similar. So it's similar, but I would say more of, I guess, the limo drivers in the sense of the big heavy
Oh,
things that we're not touching anything. Like we'll strap it down, but other people are loading it in. You're sitting there with a Loadmaster with this super expensive calculator of how to like map everything out to where the plane, if something shifts, the plane isn't going to shift as well, and then everyone's going to crash and die. And so you're the person who doesn't get sweaty loading the stuff in, while all the other grunts are doing the actual hard row labor. And where again, I agree with you. It's not something I would have been thrilled for myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know. That sounds pretty fun. I might go. I'll take a right now.
We're getting a lot of mixed messages.
Yeah, yeah. No pressure at all. No pressure at all.
So, all right, so he threw that career at you, and then did he just then lead in with photography, or then how did that come up?
Essentially, he was just like, "What else can what can we do for you?" And I was like, "Well, I really want something that's going to carry on because I didn't know if I wanted to do a full 20 at the time. I was like, I joined late. I was 25, so I was like, let me get something that can give me life experience. So if I do get out of the military, I can roll right into a job. And after doing the music degree, I got another degree, but in journalism. So I asked them, like, if they had anything for like PA, and they're like, no, we don't have anything for combat correspondence, but we do have combat photographer. And like this job had been sitting, it was like sometime like in February, and they're like, this job has been sitting here open for about like 4 months and nobody's been able to grab it. And they're like, do you want it? I was like, yeah, sure. I didn't know
So
anything
I
about
mean,
cameras.
So what does that mean, person? Like, if they just not have like the eligible persons
Yeah.
to like, qualify? Is that so also I'm conflicted as well. You have a degree,
Mm.
you have education in smarts, and why the Marine Corps over the Air Force? Again, I mean, that
He said you
both my
can read,
parents.
so
All right. Well, both my parents were Marines, right? And so, and I've come on here, and Janiqua, my mom is my number one role model in life. She did 11 years in the Marine Corps. My dad, he got medically retired. He was over in Saudi on patrol, and he got electrocuted when a telephone wire fell down. And God bless him that he survived that.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I grew up with Marines my whole life, and so for me, it wasn't an option to do another 20 years when I grew up with Marines. I already did 20 years, right? So I don't want to do 40 years in the fucking Marine Corps. That's not exciting.
trauma.
And
Big
so
T.
yeah, I need less trauma, Janico.
I wanted
Yes,
to
there's a
go
lot of. I mean, therapy just started too. So for you, so why? Yeah, and we can definitely transition away from the Marines a little bit after this, but yeah, why the Marine Corps?
Um, so I was actually between two services, well, three, but initially I wanted to go Coast Guard. I was trying to
You
go start.
Why?
you're an interesting you
Yo, what
are.
the hell? Like, what were you gonna do? Be playing the guitar on the boat? Like, why? Why?
Yeah, I was all over the place. I didn't know what I wanted to do. That's just being a musician for you, you know. But yeah, I wanted to be in Coast Guard. There was this program that if you got accepted into it, they would pay 2 years for your bachelor's to go to a school, and then you would get commissioned into the Coast Guard. Well, I got accepted into the university, which was FIU in Miami, but then I missed the board. So they told me, well, we could bring you into the Coast Guard, but you'd have to enlist for a whole year. And I said, I ain't doing that shit. I'm not,
Nope.
yeah,
Can't
you're not going to
enlist.
get me like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Because
Mhm.
if I'm going to listen to anything, it'll probably be, for me, I wanted something that was going to challenge me at the time, as cliche as that is. Um, and I felt like that the Marine Corps offered what I was looking for.
Mhm.
And also
So
the
like
Air Force recruiters weren't in their office.
every time, that's what happened to me too. I was calling and everything, and they would not call me back. So I took my ASVAB with the Army, and then when I got my score, I started leaving the score on the machine, and then they called me back.
They're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, this one can read. All right, well, we'll do that.
Uh-huh.
So the real question that everybody is waiting to hear is, what was basic training like?
For Marines,
Yeah.
I did it in San Diego. Um,
Mm.
and I mean, like, everybody wants to, like, shit on us, and call us Hollywood Marines or whatever, but you do some of those hills and those freaking mountains out there, and you let me know how that goes for you.
Wait, so there's like, because we only go to basic training in one place, right?
Oh yeah,
So is there just like a rivalry between where you went?
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
there's the
So what's
East Coast.
supposed to be the most difficult one?
I'd say it's the one in California because the
Mm.
hikes are a lot more intense. But
So yeah, and so what? And also, have you had anyone die out there? Because in Paris Island, I know I know you probably know the stories. It's pretty like it's a pretty historic situation to where like a TI took Marines out like into the marshes, and then like people drowned and died. And like
yeah,
that, yeah, that's the basic training in the Marine Corps.
That sounds like a serial
That's
killer. I'm gonna
wild.
be honest with
That's
you. That
wild.
doesn't sound like an accident. He
You know,
sounds like a killer.
we don't have like designated steak and lobster days in Marine Corps boot camp.
Okay, that was a lie. That was a lie. That wasn't until
Wow.
tech school. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. We do have
Yeah.
our birthday months,
Yeah,
but
the most I had was
anyways,
grilled cheese.
Danny. Well, okay, this isn't about attacking the Air
Yeah.
Force. We're trying to get to know you.
We try to bring you
Um,
on
Oh,
this
I'm sorry.
family
I
friendly
apologize.
program.
Yeah.
And you just come out knives blazing, baby knife us. What's what's the point of this?
so you went to college and you're a musician, and then you join this rigid, structured Marine Corps, right? And then you get to basic training. Was that a shell shock to you? Like, how was that culture shock to you being in that environment? Where it's pretty gritty.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you guys can relate, but when I was younger, I said I was never going to join the military. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not
Absolutely.
Hmm.
going to have anybody telling me what to do all the time. And
Hmm.
then here I am in Marine Corps boot camp, and somebody's literally telling me what to do all the time. And if I don't do it, then I'm going to get screamed and yelled at, and like, yeah, it's not have a good day.
Yeah. What
Um,
was? Did you have a job in a basic?
no, I was well. I did have a designation, I guess. I was I was grouped in with like the 10 worst recruits out of the whole
Okay. Oh
company.
wow.
So like they brought us all into like the front of the squad bay, like look at around you, and like whenever we call for the worst recruits, you guys like scurry on up here and like just take your
Oh
time.
no.
Oh my god! Did they
I
tell
did
you
not have
why?
yeah. They just did not like me. I don't know. They just didn't fuck with me. Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
crazy.
Yeah, but I mean that's just Marine Corps boot camp in a nutshell. They're training you to basically just question everything you do, and you know you anything you do there is like you're always wrong. Like you could do like 1,000 pull-ups, and they'd still be like you didn't do 1,001. Like,
Mm.
Hmm.
yeah.
It is, I would say, because I know when I was at First Combat Camera, I would go to Paris Island a couple of different times through my visit there, and I covered basic training. And I would say, teeters on the edge of hazing. In the sense of what we would consider on the Air Force side, where again, it's just as tough, it's just as TI like. And again, we're not having turned down service at Air Force BMT as much as I know you Marines would think that we are, but I would say for how the because it's cadet. Oh, no, it's what are y'all's names at basic training?
We're just recruits.
Recruit, yeah. And so with how the recruits, especially when you have the black belts and the green belts, right? You
Yeah.
have, and how do you look at that, and like the weird relationship when it comes to like one's just mean in your face and the other one is more of like a fatherly or a motherly figure in the sense where you can be as personable of whatever that means at basic, but then they can switch, they can come in with a different colored belt at some time and psychologically cause trauma to where they're going to be down your throat, and you're going to be pushing, till you break. And so, like, what was that like for you? And I guess too, when it's all come said and done, and you look back at it now, is that something that you'll find a position you might find yourself in the near future? Because I know a lot of Marines make their way through going back and being a TI.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the age that I'm at right now, I'm 34, Griff. If I go to boot camp, I'll be 37 by the time I'm leaving. I'll be broken
That's
as hell.
rough. That's
Yeah,
rough. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't, as much as I have flirted with the idea of going back to be a drill instructor, I
Hmm.
think I have to sit this one out. But what was the original question? What the
So
experience going through boot camp
Well, I
was like?
guess yeah. Well, it was going to be more of like the psychological trauma of like trauma bonding with either the black belt or the green belt. And I guess could you actually, for our listeners who might not know what that is, because I did a horrible job of really painting that picture, can you explain the difference between those two kinds of positions of like the DIs while you're at basic?
Yeah, of course. So in boot camp, I had a platoon of around over 100 recruits, and we had about five drill instructors for like about 120 recruits. Now these drill instructors are assigned roles. So the black belt, the one that you're talking about, that's called our senior drill instructor. He's the one that's like in charge of the drill instructors, but also the one that like he's the top dog for the platoon essentially. And then the green belts are just the other drill instructors that are underneath him that they have their own roles as well. Like we have a kill hat whose sole job is to destroy recruits and to just scream at you and make your life miserable. Um, we have the J hat, which is the guy that teaches you drill movements because Marine Corps boot camp isn't just about being hazed. It's primarily about learning drill.
Of course, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So that was the probably the shocker for me was going to boot camp and not being under the impression that I wasn't doing like push-ups for 24 hours straight. It was actually just a lot of drill movements. Um, but yeah, that's basically what the organization is like in boot camp. But you're right. Like the black belts are supposed to be like the father figure. The J hat, who's the second in command, is supposed to be kind of like the mother, I guess, but in a weird way. I mean,
Hmm. Yeah.
moms and dads in like funny hats just screaming at you in your ear.
Right.
Yeah,
That's their way of saying that they love you.
yeah,
Is by letting you have little sleep, but also making us better. Right? We're learning how to manage stress and operate under duress and work as a team. Not be individuals anymore. We're part of something bigger and greater, and we find it's where we sort of find out where we fall in within all that. So all this fun BMT stuff to the side. Fast forwarding to your photo professional career starting out. What was that like for you? Can you tell us what it was like getting to your first base, your first installation? Where was that? Did you have any kind of like top photographer or videographer there that were able to learn from? Was there any kind of mentor, or were you sort of on your own? Did you sort of have to carve your own path?
no, absolutely. That's a great question. Because I went to First Marine Division. Um, I was able to get that choice, which is kind of rare because I was able to graduate at the top of my class. So we got back in those times, we got, to choose your duty station, and I wanted to deploy. And so people were telling me First Marine Division was the place to go. And that's based out of Camp Pendleton. And so when I get there, it's kind of hard at first because, you have to adjust. You're slowly being you're slowly being demilitarized, if that makes any sense. Whereas like in boot camp, your entire life is regimented down to like you have no idea what time it is, but you have to go. And
Hmm.
then when you when you're finally in the fleet, as they say, you're now like you're doing your day to day life as somebody in the military. You have a car, you have your own room in the barracks, and yeah, you can be a normal civilian again. Um,
As normal as you can manage,
as normal as it can be, yeah. But yeah, back then I would say the person I credited the most with mentoring me was Akil Austin. He's a warrant officer now, but he's the one that actually told me about the Eddie Adams workshop, about who Eddie Adams is, who Nick Oot is, and he was like, you need to like figure out the history and figure out why these people are so important, because this is what your job is gonna entail. Especially during that time, it was 2015. We were, downscaling from Iraq and Afghanistan, but we were still doing operations against ISIS at the time. So we were always told to be ready to deploy within 72 hours.
Mhm.
And so we always had to have that mindset of just like be ready to get out there. So he was very much like the one that put that battery in my back and like told me like we can teach you so much, but you also gotta, you know, carry your own load too, and see where it takes you.
Mhm.
Um, and then so he was my corporal, and then the one that was in charge of us was Mass Sergeant Capella. He's already retired, but he's like basically what I wanted to be if I stayed in the Marine Corps. Like didn't do any B billets, just a guy who went to like Syracuse and like just lived and breathed this MOS. And I was like, that's who I want to be. Like do I don't want to just be drink the Kool Aid and just be Marine Corps all the time. Like I'm very passionate about what I do, and I want to pass that on to my Marines as well.
Yeah, so with that, I think for me, it was like I had the mentor and stuff, and I was watching how they were taking pictures and the different like techniques and stuff they were using, and I was like, but my pictures suck, and I don't know how to get from there to there. So, what do you feel like you inspired you, and when did you feel like you actually started making what you saw in your head come across on your camera?
Mm, I think when it came to like inspiration, I was just always like looking at stuff online, seeing what other Marines were doing and publishing out there, following the social medias and like seeing like those that good imagery. And then in terms of like improving my skills, I would just take the camera out on the weekends and practice on my own, like watch YouTube videos, see like a photo that I like and like try to unpack that. I think one trip in particular, I did like a 4 day trip to San Francisco, and I was like, I've never done long exposure photography, and then I brought a tripod out there, and just started doing it. And at first it was rough, but then the more you keep doing it, the better you're gonna
Hmm.
get at it. So um, yeah, that's how I mainly just learned. It's just a lot of trial and error, honestly.
Yeah, so speaking of like trial and error, right? Like what inspired you to apply for Syracuse? And what was that journey like of like putting your package together and then finally getting accepted?
I think I would attribute a lot of that to Shane Keller. He was my instructor at Dinfos. He was actually prior Marine as well too. Um, and he was the one that was like he did RIT, like he went to Rochester, so he showed us like some of the cool photographs he did. One in particular was like a bullet going through a crayon. Very typical Marine Corps related.
Right.
But he was like, "This is the kind of cool stuff we do. Like the shutter was triggered by like an audio thing, like all this cool technology." And he's like, "Also, there's this program. Uh, that's called Syracuse that people in the military can go through. And I was at that point, I was just like, okay, that's something I would want to do.
Sounds like Janiqua. Janiqua was motivated by proving people wrong, though. And that was
Yeah, honestly, because nobody in my class would think that this is where I am now. Nobody would have thought that for me, and they all can eat it.
they can
But
eat it.
with that, like, how when you were putting your package and stuff like that together, did you have any doubt about getting in? And then what was it like when you finally got the acceptance and then that experience of going?
Um, it was kind of, I can't say that I thought about it too much because I was on deployment at the time. I was actually on the 13th Mule with Ray. So we both applied to Syracuse at the same time. We both got accepted at the same time, and we both were roommates during Syracuse. So it's kind of like a small world, honestly. But no, it was great, and to be able to go through Syracuse with like somebody that I deployed with and that like I consider one of my like my best friends was incredible experience. And we met a lot of talented people in that class as well too. So it's very humbling as well.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. I think like coming from, you're at your small wing, at your small base, taking pictures and stuff. I think the most interesting part for me was like getting in class and seeing everybody else's photos, and some of them I had seen before, whether it was like in a contest or stuff like that. So that was really interesting. But then also having people know my photos. I don't think I really you just think, I'm at my base doing my thing, and the people at my base know my work, but you never think it really reaches outside. So I think that was super cool. Not to mention like the teachers and stuff there.
Oh,
What do you think was your favorite class?
I mean, one hands down, Professor Heisler's class.
Mhm.
It just he just has such an incredible way of explaining light. And my gunny previous to going there actually had his book, and he's like, read this book, and like you'll understand. And like I poured through every page because he does such an incredible job of explaining like how he sets up lights and how he sits down with like these A-list clients and humanizes them, whereas like everybody else would just like put them up on a pedestal and be too enamored with the names. But it's funny that you mentioned that other people were familiar with your photographs. I don't know if people probably aren't aware of this, but me and Janiqua went to Syracuse together from 2019 to 2020. And one of the people in our class was another Marine, Aaron Patterson, and his photos were a lot of the ones that I was looking up to before I came in. I actually like messaged him about like how he had gotten like this shot or whatever, and he like responded to me like years before we even went to Syracuse. So yeah, that's one of the I guess that's one of the benefits of the military is you stay in long enough, you're gonna bound to like bump into each other at some point or another.
Yeah, it's a lot of weird connections like that in our class because Eureka, we were both in Air Combat Command at the same time, so we would compete in the contests with each other. Then
Oh,
never met each other or whatever, but like same cat. I would take one category, she would take another, and then it was like the same thing with Corey, because Corey, I actually photographed his brother. Like his brother worked at the base defense group at my base, and we were doing they were doing some kind of like movement thing, and I took his picture and wrote a caption and all that stuff or whatever. And when I got into Syracuse, he saw my name on the list, and he was like, "Oh, you photographed my brother." I was like, "Who
that's
the hell is this guy?" Like,
that's so
yeah,
funny.
yeah, it was wild times.
Well,
So, oh no, go ahead.
yeah, so I'm sorry, Janique. So for me, like I'm curious, like because everything that you've shared and like you're talking about how you looked up to people and it was sort of like this culmination of everything coming to fruition and like you talked about earlier, you're getting older now, right? At least your knees are aching a little bit more, and you've walked a lot of this path that you aspired to be when it comes to being a photographer in the Marine Corps, to getting to Syracuse, and also Eddie Adams as well. And I definitely want to visit that in a second. But have you really started to have you been embracing this role now of being that leader for your community, for Marines, and showing that there's a path forward for them? And or a lot of times too, it's like it's letting people even know that these opportunities exist, and it's not me just telling you that they exist. Let me tell you what this opportunity means, right? And so even though there's all this technology out there, and there's social media, and there's YouTube where we can learn all these different tools and techniques, it's a little bit different when there's people a part of this special community that we're all drinking this Kool-Aid because we're passionate and excited about this craft, or one way or another, a little bit different for each of us, but we're all excited. And when we're surrounded by like minds, it keeps us excited to move forward, because being creative and at a constantly challenging and a high level, especially for what we do, like a defense media activity or anywhere in the military, it's this constant demand that can be taxing. But when you have peers that you can talk to and work out ideas with, it gives you that extra boost in your step and motivation to keep going. So I know I'm rambling a little bit, but can you tell us, have you really started to embrace like this next role of being this leader for your community? And if you have, what has that been like?
Absolutely. I mean, it's it's hard. I'm sure Janiqua can relate to as well because we're both pretty much like we're the same rank, right? You're tech sergeant. Yeah.
Yep.
She
Looking
doesn't
at
know Marine rank. She doesn't know Marine
I
rank.
have
So
no
don't
idea.
even. Don't...
I was just saying, yeah. I
She's
hope
like,
so.
you got my rank. You got me.
I was like, it sounds familiar. I'm not. I
Mm.
was like, E6.
yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, in the Marines, like, and I'm pretty sure in every other branch too. It's like the longer you stay in, the more you're gonna be like sat behind a desk. You know what I mean? It's like, we understand you're very passionate, old man, but you go in that corner over there and you tell the Marines where they need to go. We don't want you out there behind the camera. And you're like, damn it, like I really want to go shoot, but I have to. That's part of embracing the role is like I have to kind of, I don't want to say sacrifice, but I just want to say like I want to be able to afford those opportunities to the Marines. Like, yes, of course, I can go out and like go photograph it, and I feel confident that I'd come back with good imagery, but I've been there and done that, and I don't want to take that opportunity away from my Marines, and hopefully see them excel in their own right.
Hmm.
So I think that's been the biggest switch that I've had to come up with recently is how to feel gratified with your work when you're not necessarily the one that's shooting it.
Right.
And at DMA, which is where we all work, I felt that, you know, very much so. I mean, like, I'm pretty new to when it comes to this rank and this like position and authority. I would say I've been as a staff sergeant, which is an E6. E6.
got her. Got her. I knew that. I knew that. Janiqua, we'll work on that, Janiqua.
Uh,
You can give up on me now because I will never know.
but yeah, I've been in E6 for about 2 years, and I've had to kind of just be able to embrace the role of stepping back and being more of a mentor and having patience when it comes to that. I'd say
Hmm.
that's the biggest goal
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn right now.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, and I get it, and there's definitely a transitionary period, and like I was spoiled rotten most of my career. I was able to shoot, and I really didn't step back from shooting until I got into my role over here at Airman Magazine and helping lead the section with Janique and the team that we have. But I would tell you, as you dedicate yourself to that, little by little, like it, you as we all mature down this professional path of being technicians and capturing these moments and telling these stories and getting out strategic messages, whatever, whether it's the military or civilians, you get to a point that you have so much knowledge, and we get a little bit older and slower that our cup potentially starts to fill in different ways. And so when I'm able to share something with Janico for the rest of the team, and at first it might sound silly to them, it might sound ridiculous, and they might not apply it right away, but maybe in 4, 5, 6, or 12 months later, when you see it implemented in their shooting, or when you see it implemented in a final product, you know that's where like the dividends truly pay for itself, and that's where our legacies really thrive. And I know I've talked about this kind of stuff on here before, but Janiqua and I know that a lot of airmen come into this section, and like I've won a bunch of awards in the Air Force and in DoD for MILFOG, and the younger airmen today would have no clue. They don't even know what MILFOG is. They didn't understand. Like for us, that was like the Pulitzer, and so to them, that means absolutely nothing. But what means something to them is, did Sergeant Griffin give them a tool to put in their toolbox that they can use for the next 20 years if they want to use that? And that's how my name will continue to live on, where my cup is full and I feel proud of my contributions and what I can do and give back, and continue to be of value to people's lives. Because as much as in the moment when you're younger, and I'm just as guilty of wanting to win awards and thinking that this is going to change who I am, it's going to change my path forward. When you get on the other side of that, it's really not much different, right? Because what it's all about, that path that we did to get there. It's all those choices we made, the sacrifices, like you going out and trying new time-lapse things, or long exposures, and making a lot of mistakes. It's these things that within our character that we committed through these processes that created these opportunities to be recognized. And it wasn't necessarily being recognized that was going to define us going forward, because we already determined like how we were going to walk this path. This was just sort of like just a page out of many chapters in our shooting career. And I think the mentorship part, I think, has far more chapters than our shooting part, but it doesn't mean that we can't shoot and fill our cup, in our own ways. Like you said, we're going to give the Marines and airmen those opportunities to be recognized while they're in the Air Force, while they're younger, so they can then garner that knowledge. Because if we steal that from them, we're also stealing that experience, that when they won't have that experience to pass on when we're old. And like me tomorrow, and I press that button and I'm out in a calendar year, Janiqua, everything that I shared with you, it can now live on through you, right? And because no one's going to listen to civilian Griff, right? Master Sergeant Griffin, they have to listen to, right? Whether through fear or excitement, enthusiasm, one of the three, yes. And I thrive in that environment, right? And but no, I adore and I appreciate you leaning into that mentorship aspect of everything. I think as you lean more and more into that, your cup will continue to fill. You'll get excited when they have their successes, and those are your shared successes as well, right? They didn't see light that way. They didn't see that shot that way until you took them by the hand and pointed them like, "Hey, dummy, over. You see that? Just press the button," and then they're like, "Holy shit," And Janiqua, and I know I haven't really Janiqua, and this is where I failed Janiqua. I've given Janiqua a lot of things. I give her a lot of things. I feel like I've really created a lot of opportunities for her that she's earned. But at the same time, one thing that she's always said is she wanted to learn lighting from me. And still to this day, 3 years in, she could be leaving us very soon for Stars and Stripes. We're just saying, we're putting it out there, Janiqua, because if we put it out there, it has to happen.
It better not backfire. If it backfires, I'm gonna blame you.
I mean,
like, he cursed me on Halloween.
But it's so there's still a little small window left. We can go over some lighting before you leave. But
am I a joke to you? Just an afterthought?
I mean, no, I definitely going to be a forethought when I can come visit you in Tokyo.
Wow, what a crazy time.
But so Danny, enough about me. But let's talk about Eddie Adams' workshop. And so, because I know we don't want to hold you here forever, and we could talk about the workshop forever. So what did it mean to you? Like, you learned about Eddie Adams, and he was a Marine. He created this workshop, and then you are now selected to go. What was that experience like? Did it, as I'm going on social media and hyping the workshop to the moon, you hear me and Janiqua talk about it on the podcast. What was it like when you were walking up to the barn the first time?
I honestly had no idea what I was getting into. I talked to Janiqua when I got accepted, because I was living in Japan at the time. I was like, "Yo, what can I expect when I come here?" She's like, "Just don't worry about it. Just come here.
Just don't worry about it." Well, great advice, Janiqua.
Take it off.
I think I said sleep when you can.
Exactly.
Make sure you eat and just be helpful.
Which is great advice. Like, honestly, like, she helped me out. I'm just giving her a hard time. But,
I always get stabbed. It's hard. all right. It's all right.
The guilt trip. Oh no, I'm sorry. uh, but yeah, just walking up to the barn was just it was surreal, honestly. Yeah, just being in a huge crowd and everybody's like screaming, waving at you, and you know, I've been screamed at before, but
Yeah, this is a different kind. This is a positive kind. This is a welcoming.
It
This
was
isn't,
it was teetering. You're never
right,
sure.
right.
You don't know
yeah,
until you know. You know what I mean?
PTSD from, yeah,
Hmm.
I could see that now. I didn't
yeah,
see that till now. Thanks, Danny.
It's in the eyes.
We'll talk about that's something we'll talk with Yvonne and Miriam about
Just a
making sure we don't
quiet,
trigger the vets
a
that come
quiet,
through.
a quiet clap.
Hmm.
yeah. No, it was incredible. I had Camille Seaman as like she was like our team lead, I guess.
Iconic. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, crazy story that could like never be replicated. Um, Corinne, amazing editor
Hmm.
and just super supportive, and just a kick-ass person. Al Drago, who did amazing for finding the stories, and then we had Joseph as our IT guy, who put in a lot of like the unseen hours and stuff. But we
Hmm.
just had a great team, and then the people in my team were just really incredible as well.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was yeah. I don't know.
I think it was interesting, like for me, going from Syracuse to Eddie Adams, and like I hadn't really been in an environment like I did the Senior Citizen Center, right, when we were in Syracuse, and like just that slow pace of like going back there every day, and then noticing things that I hadn't noticed, 3 weeks ago.
Hmm.
So for your story, I know yours was like a little bit more conceptual, I guess
Hmm.
I could say, and it took a lot of patience. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like, especially after like what you learned in Syracuse and then bringing that to Eddie Adams?
Yeah, so I had my story was Michael. He was a man that had like needed a caregiver. He was I want to say he was in like his late 50s or 60s. Um, so he needed a caregiver. He was an adult man that needed a caregiver and lived with a bunch of other adults that were also in the same similar situation. So when I was given the story, they don't tell you what the story is. They tell you this is who you're going to cover, this is where you're going to do it, and this is the time you need to be back. And so, taking that all in mind, I was just like trying to talk with him, but um, he would talk, but like he would just talk in loops. So it was kind of like unresponsive. So, in order for me to come up with a story, I wanted to do something where I wanted to show people like who he is and like how it feels to be him, but also like preserve his dignity because he is a man and he's a person that deserves it. And they're allowing me into their home and their space. So I wanted to make sure that the photos I took weren't objectifying him or trying to display him as anything different than what you would consider a normal person. Um, so I think that was the biggest challenge was to create a story where essentially it's just a man living in his room, being in his own environment, um, and to somehow communicate that through photographs. So I just when it came to the approach, I just photographed like as much as I could of it, like how Professor Tonsing would say, just shoot the shit out of it. And yeah, it was definitely a great experience, and just being able to use some of the skills that we get in the military, which is often more than times than not, you get given an assignment, and they're like, "Here's this thing, I need you to photograph it," but we don't know what the story is, and so sometimes you have to create something out of nothing,
Hmm.
and being able to apply those skills definitely is like something I try to pass on to my Marines as well.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janiqua.
No, I was just gonna say, what do you think was the biggest lesson that you took away from that weekend, and that you got out of the workshop in general?
Out of the workshop in general, or for that weekend, even though I felt like at this point I'm closing in on 10 years in the military, um, but going to these workshops and like interacting with professionals, very accomplished professionals, students, people are trying to come into the business. I've realized that I don't really understand the industry as much as I would want to. And that's just because, being in the military, we have the skill set and we have the equipment, but we don't speak the same language that civilian photographers do. Like, we don't have editors, we don't have publishers. Like, a lot of that we do on our own. Like, I edit all my photos, I process all my imagery, I take all my photos. And so I think going to the workshop just like opened my eyes and like still made me feel like I'm basically at like this bottom level, and like I still need to understand more and like still continue to cut my teeth in the game. And so as being back here in the states now, that's what I want to be able to do outside of the military, is like be able to pursue those projects, because I feel like in order to be a professional at this level, you have to have some kind of project that you're working on. And that was something I didn't know before coming to the workshop.
No, I think that's fantastic. I think that's a very mature and positive perspective to have. I think confidence is necessary, but arrogance and ego aren't. Essential into what we see from our peers, and I think it sort of goes both ways, right? So a lot of times, I think with the military, like the picture you painted, we undercut ourselves because we look at a lot of what our peers are doing outside and our civilian friends, and they're creating remarkable work. But it's like you said, sometimes they have editors, they have so many different layers of support when it comes to just outside of shooting. And some of them are doing it all too, right? But for a lot of us in the military, it is us. And also just if they're, let's say they're local photographers, or even let's say New York Times, that are shooting around DC, they could have, a couple assignments a day, and that's no different than us as well. When we're giving out like, hey, you have to go cover these three things and have everything packaged and up on the website by the end of the day. It's like we undercut the same kind of tempo and stress that we're put under, just because we have this comfortability of this culture that we're committed to under this umbrella. Compared to them, it sometimes seems like more the wild wild west, because we're so far separate
Mm.
from living that kind of life. But like you said, I think it's a testament to what they do, and their work is incredible. But a lot of them are always impressed by us as well when they truly get to know us, because they don't really get a peek inside of our world unless we have these unique experiences like the Eddie Adams workshop, or we
Sure.
bring back the DoD workshop, and we can bring
Hopefully.
in the civilian mentors that we've been able to establish these strong bonds. And that's why a lot of them get excited and want to even be involved in the DoD, because once they see it, like just like for us, it's addicting for them just as much. They thrive on it just as much. And so for you, I'm just trying to paint a picture for potential upcoming students that will listen to this over the forthcoming years. Like as we know, as we all said, like you're a big winner of the workshop, the big Canon Award, which is incredible. But I think something that doesn't really get discussed are the small details that I think that factor in with some of these decisions when it comes to nominating people on teams, and that comes to feedback. Right. And so when you're going out, if you can sort of paint a picture where you shared with us sort of your critical thinking when it came approaching this story when you were out shooting and the time that you had. But can you share with us what it was like when you actually came back with your work and they were looking through your shots? Were you receptive? Were you combative? Were they complimentary? Or can you share with us what that experience is like? Because I think this is an integral piece for any student that's gone through the workshop. In hindsight, they look at super important to take away. So for future applicants, this is definitely something you can put in your back pocket.
Absolutely. When my experience was pretty unique in the fact that I brought a vehicle, and I had to drive myself to my shoot about 45 minutes out and then drive back. So a lot of what I did was just shoot and like stash. So like come back, hand off my SD card to Joseph, sit down and just, in the middle of presentations during the coffee breaks or whatever, then I'd get the SD card back and then, go right into the next presentation. So it was very like, it was a super fast paced environment, where like if you're used to maybe sitting down with like your editor and them going frame by frame and telling you like, oh, this is not it, or I like where this is going, like that's probably not going to be your experience, because we have a lot of people going through, and you have a very limited time when it comes to shooting. And so whenever you do get feedback, just understand that those are the time constraints that you have, and um, you know, take advantage of it as much as you can. Maybe like try to see those editors after the workshop, or like during lunch or something like that. You got to really try to find a way to squeeze in the time, because your project is important, but so are like the 10 other people's projects that are on your team as well too. And like somebody may be struggling more than you are, so like you kind of have to either take a seat back, or allow people in, and like don't hog all the reception. So I think just be mindful of other people, and um, just have confidence in yourself too. I think I said it too whenever they interviewed, but I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves whenever they come into these workshop environments, and if things aren't going their way, which I've been there, like Eddie Adams' workshop, I think is like my third workshop I've done, and I mean Mary was my first mentor at the DoD workshop, and
Rough, rough. Hmm.
we
Hmm.
have
She's
a
brutal.
every time I see her, we always look and laugh at each other, because it was just a very very funny moment that everything that could possibly go wrong was going wrong, and she she was just at one point she was just like, "I need you to get your shit together." Like she didn't say it. Like, it was
Yeah.
just she did
Hmm.
what she could have
She
said
doesn't
it.
mince word. Oh, she probably said exactly like that. You don't, you're not going to get her in trouble. Mary will tell you, no,
Honestly,
say it like
that's
I
who she
said it.
is.
But
Yeah,
she,
say it like I said it, Danny.
um, and so I had Mary and I had Shane McCoy, which like Shane is like this
Hmm.
big old dude that works on the U.S. Marshals, so like he's also intimidating as fuck too. So uh, I was just basically I had to dig myself out of the hole. But coming to the workshop at the Eddie Adams, like if you feel like you're, I don't know, drowning or whatever, just give yourself some time, and give yourself some patience and some grace. You'll get there eventually. I mean, everybody who gets accepted in the Eddie Adams workshop, you're there for a reason. You know what I mean? There's only 100 applicants can go a year, and
Mhm.
Hmm.
I think the people who are in charge of making those decisions know what they're doing at this point. I mean,
Right. He's not paid to say this, he promised,
Ooh,
these are his
ooh.
words.
uh,
No, yeah, no, it's you're absolutely
Is it
right.
Venmo or Cash App?
You know,
Which one?
right. Miriam's gonna get it. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're absolutely right. And if you're at the workshop, you're already talented, right? Like you said, there's hundreds, if not 1,000 plus people apply year to year to this workshop, and if you're a part of that 100 that gets selected, you're already talented, right? So you should walk in knowing that you're gifted, that you have tools in your toolbox, and it's like you said, it's taking these opportunities to be aware, and to help others when needed, but also like get the most out of it you can, right, based off
Hmm.
where you're at in your path yourself. And then
Yeah.
based off of that experience and like the advice Janico gave you, just be helpful. You presented the character to where they brought you back as black team, and which is another incredible experience as well, to be able to come back and chase that dragon of that feeling that we had when we walked up as students, to try to relive it as volunteers. And in a special way, in a unique way, we sort of get to do that when we have these opportunities to come back. But I would say that's great advice, and that's great insight for future applicants to think about as they go through that process, and if they get selected, to start retooling their mindset so they can go into the workshop and then come out successful on the other side. But I know we've had you forever. We've had you for a hot minute. I know we have one last question we love asking everyone. It's one of our most exciting questions for us, because sometimes it causes duress and stress. For us,
Mm.
not so much. More for the guest. And
all
so
right.
with this, I will hand it off to Janiqua,
Oh,
because I
really?
know
Okay.
I know our handoff is always sort of fumbly, but I love it about this as well. Janiqua, can you bring us to the finish line?
All right. So, considering the fact that we had to get special photo assignments where we had to figure out different photographers and talk about their work because we sucked at photo history,
Still do.
this question just goes right along with that. And it's just like, it could be a photo that you've taken. It could be a photo that you've seen out there in the wild. It could be one that you studied or one that you thought about to, you were like dead in the head trying to figure out how they lit it that way or whatever. But
Mm.
what is your all-time favorite photo?
Okay. When I read this question, I initially interpreted it as like something that I had taken, but
We can
That's
do
you're
both.
not wrong. You're not
answer,
wrong.
Yeah,
preschool
it's
answer.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
I would say probably the one that like stood out to me the most is one of Carol Guzzi's. She went and spoke to us during the first uh, DoD workshop that I went to in Virginia, and it was just this haunting image of a woman. She's like her head is coming out of the water, and she's got these blackened eyes, and it's in Colombia, and it's just super incredible because like it's a Carol Guzzi is an amazing human being, and when you hear her talk, she's just the most soft spoken person that has lived through some of the most terrible moments in human history, and the way she presents photographs is just beautiful art and like super haunting and sad, but I think is something that is absolutely admirable because she can take something that's really terrible and make something not fantasize about it like people want to be drawn to the gore and all that stuff when it comes to like these terrible moments, but you can get the message across just the same and still preserve people's dignities, and I think that photograph is the one that sticks out in my head, honestly, for that reason.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. It's like not shying away from what the moment means or trying to make it, better, I guess, or appear better or less horrific,
Hmm.
but also not like uh for lack of a better term, not like trauma porn or like,
Yeah.
I mean, sensationalizing it or making
Yes,
it
that's the word. Yep.
like clickbait.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, she's really incredible, and when you hear her speak, like it's super insightful. She's very quiet and soft spoken, but I mean, she's a badass in every single sense of the word. And truly, that was like what inspired me the most. We saw her back in 2017, and like still to this moment. And then Tim Hetherington's probably another one of my heroes. I got to see his uh, film, and his work in Africa still, inspires me. The square frames all the time. Yeah.
I love it. Danny, that's an awesome way. I mean, I don't think I could find a better way to end that myself, Janiqua. Danny, thank you. This has been a blast. It's already been an hour. Thank you for sharing so much with us about yourself that we didn't know. Musician, college, still the Marine Corps, still, decisions yet to be made. Was it the best thing? I would say up to this point, yes.
I mean,
Again,
you're successful.
yeah,
You're doing your thing,
far better than I was doing at this point. So, and Danny, again, no, all joking to the side, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We hope you have an unspooky rest of your Halloween as we approach midnight here shortly. But
Sir.
again, okay, what? Janiqua, you're cut off. All
I'm
right,
sorry. I
Danny.
thought you were bringing up your
Oh yeah,
hitting the
no. Oh
button
wow,
again.
yeah. No,
That's
I didn't even think about that. But we
oh,
can't
okay.
make it about me. Anyways, anyways, this is awesome, guys. Thank you so much,
That was fun.
Danny. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'm sure we'll see each other here soon.
Thank you for
Oh
having me.
wow.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Janiqua. Pleasure seeing you guys.
Hell, oh wow.
So we'll stay on. Oh shit, no, I don't. Let me click stop. I almost click leave.
oh